book friends, I'm Erin and this is Erin Go Read. I have my very first original tag. I've been thinking about this probably for over a year, and I think I actually even filmed this or started filming it and then never published it. So this is the Hindsight is 2020 tag. So obviously, like it just hindsight 2020. It just feels right. Now this isn't necessarily, I'm not really talking about the year 2020, although it's just kind of fitting. But really, what really interests me is knowing about kind of the history of someone as a reader. So not even specific books, but you personally and like the label of reader. So like, I am a runner. Like I identify as a runner because I like to run. I run for pleasure, as an outlet, as social time, as something competitive that I do from time to time. So I identify with that label. And then I think a lot of us who are readers, we identify as a reader. You know, if you were to fill out a form that asks you to list your hobbies, reading would be one of those things that you would identify as something that you do for pleasure. And so I feel like I have somewhat of an interesting history of reading, that I very much was not a reader, although I wanted to be. So I have 5 prompts here to kind of just to get to know each person, whoever wants to do this, get to know you better as a reader, how you started as a reader, and kind of where you are now. So question number 1 is, what were you like as an early reader? So I'm just looking for like, you know, some kids were reading before they got to kindergarten. Books were just all over their house and they were prolific readers as 4 and 5-year-olds. Was that you? Did you have a hard time reading? Did you have to be forced to read, or were you under the blanket with a flashlight in your bed when you were supposed to be sleeping reading because you couldn't get enough? We all learned to read and had an early experience with books and reading, so just tell me about that. So I had kind of a difficult time as an early reader. I have a late November birthday, and when I was in school, the cutoff date for going to kindergarten, you had to turn 5 by December 2nd. I'm November 29th, and my parents felt I was ready, so I went to kindergarten at 4.5. And it seemed fine until I guess kind of first grade. I started kind of slipping behind a little bit, and reading was really the area that I was having some difficulty with. I had some health challenges too, kind of like midway through first grade and into 3rd grade, which I'm sure had a big effect there. I ended up in a pull-out remedial reading kind of class where the resource teacher took a group of us into a different classroom, and we worked on our reading skills. And then I think it was like midway through 3rd grade that I kind of got released back into my regular classroom for reading time. I got a lot of headaches when I was a kid. It was part of this health issue that I had. And so that was a big kind of deterrent, because pretty much whenever I started reading, I would get a headache. And I couldn't tell you what my real struggle was as far as like actual like decoding or anything like that. But it was just quite a challenge for me. And I remember basically spending all of 3rd grade trying to read the novelization of Home Alone. I think it was actually Home Alone 2. And I just remember every day after lunch, we had like 15 or 20 minutes of silent reading time after we came back in. And almost every day I would get a really bad headache trying to read Home Alone 2. And oftentimes I would get sent home from school early with these kind of debilitating headaches. And it wasn't really until much later that I really enjoyed reading. Question number 2, if there was one, what book or series really got you excited about reading as a kid? For me, so I did have a difficult time reading as a kid, but there was a particular, I've never heard anybody talk about this series before. It was called the Pee-wee Scouts. And it was like, there were probably 60 to 100 page books about a co-ed scout troop, the Pee-wee Scouts. And it was like an early reader, like a early chapter book kind of book. And it was the first series that I was really interested in it. And it was, the reading level was just kind of just right at the time I picked those up. After Pee-wee Scouts, the series that I got into, which was super common for, 80s, 90s kids was Goosebumps. I remember, I think when I really got into it I was probably like 11, 12 maybe. And they were easy to read. They were like, everybody else was reading them, and they were fun. And so it was a really great series to get kids into reading books, and far easier of a like reading level wise than like Harry Potter, which wasn't out when I was that age anyway. But they were everywhere, so and there were so many of them. So you could go to the library and you'd have your pick, whether it was the classroom library or the public library or whatever. So I remember when the summers when I was 12 and 13, my sister and I went to Arizona, the Phoenix area, to stay for a few weeks with my aunt and uncle and my cousin Ira, who's the same age as me. And in Arizona, in the summer, there's not a lot you can do. Basically, after like 10 o'clock in the morning, it is sweltering. So one of the things that we would do would be to go to the library. It's nice and cool. We would hang out in the library for a while, get whatever books we wanted, and then we spent a lot of time at home just hanging out and reading. So I read a ton of Goosebumps books while I was there in Arizona during that time. And then from there, kind of transitioned from, in the R.L. Stine world, from Goosebumps into the Fear Street books, which were more of a like pre-YA, because I think that, what you would classify as YA now, maybe those would still be too young. I'm not even sure. But they were much more standard size font and margins and everything, but like young horror. Question number 3, has there been a person in your life, real or fictional, who really made an impact on you as a reader or inspired you to be a reader? So the person in my life who really inspired me to be a reader, made me really want to be a reader, was actually a friend when I was really young. Her name was Leah, and she lived around the corner from me in the same neighborhood, and my mom watched her and her sister for a while, and she was she was always reading. She could read in the car, which I get car sick, so I was always kind of jealous that she could read in the car and not get sick, but she just loved reading. We would make these like forts and stuff like in the garage or on the side of the house or whatever with like cardboard and wood and whatever we had around, and make these like little reading forts. And so I wanted to be as good at reading and be as into reading as she was. And so that was always something kind of like, I have asthma and activity induced asthma. And so I always wanted to be a reader, or a runner rather. But I just kind of didn't have like the lungs and the fitness for it. So once I figured that aspect of it out and got to be a runner, it's kind of a similar thing for me. But anyway, yeah, Leah was a real life person who I really wanted to be like, because I just really envied that relationship with books that she had. Question number 4, at what point in your life did you kind of take on that label as a reader, someone who chooses to read in their free time, like I am a runner and a reader? When did you become a reader and not just a person who knows how to read? So I think I kind of took on the label of a reader in high school. So I went to public school from kindergarten through 4th grade, and then Catholic school 5th through 8th, and then back to public school for high school. And when going from kind of middle school at a Catholic school with very high standards back to public school, I was really like leaps and bounds ahead of my peers, and I was seen as the smart kid. And I never thought of myself as the smart kid, and I didn't think I was like stupid or anything like that, but I thought I was very average. So all of a sudden, to be seen as smart, it was kind of this other fulfilling prophecy. So other people saw me as smart, so then I basically acted smart, and so I would like do things that smart people do. I was also kind of socially awkward, so especially in high school, if you don't have anybody to like talk with, those few minutes before when you get into the classroom and get to your desk and the bell rings, a book is a really good kind of social shield. And then it also fit my persona as the smart kid. So I really started reading books then, and then I also learned that just the act of reading, not even the knowledge that you take in while you're reading, but the act of reading builds new synapses in your brain, essentially making you smarter. So that is really what kind of started that for me. but I didn't become, you know, like the prolific reader that I am until a few years ago. And question number 5, how has being a reader shaped your worldview? So now we're looking a little bit more current day, who the person you are today, and however long that you've been a reader, how has that shaped how you see the world, maybe how you interact with other people? Reading has shaped my worldview in that it has allowed me to be in the head, in the family, in the culture of people very much unlike me. I've always had kind of a hard time in my mind kind of being able to know, know on a head level, but not really feel that different people and people who live differently than me are just as human. It's like, it sounds stupid to and crazy to say, but different cultures or just completely different way of beings, that is 100% okay. And so I would always have to remind myself in my head of that. But having read so much, particularly in the last few years, and getting to be inside the head of characters who live in very different cultures, very different families, have very different norms. My mom and I were actually just talking about this yesterday, or on Christmas. We were talking about the normal food to have at a holiday dinner or something. And the way she grew up, and then when she became part of my dad's family, and it was like, where's this and where's this, and they only have this, and so the idea of what's normal to you could be completely abnormal to somebody else. So yeah, just having a much more open, broad view of things, and being much more open-minded than to people in real life, and knowing that everybody has a backstory and that everybody has a different idea of what normal is to them. And then I think then that allows me to be more empathetic and less judgmental, because it's definitely something that was a big part of who I was in the past. I used to tell my friends, I'm not judgmental, I'm just observant. But yeah, so reading has made me a more open-minded and open-hearted person. And then number 6 is just tag somebody whose history of reading you want to know more about. Stevie is not a very good reader, although he really likes to bury books. So that's a fun tidbit about his love of books. So I have 5 people I'm going to tag, because these are people who I know in the booktube community who I think might actually do the tag, and people who I haven't heard necessarily talk about their early reading experiences. So Doris with All D Books, Kate at Kate Howe, Ashley at Bookish Realm, Kim at Middle of the Book March, and Claudia at Spinster's Library. So please, if you feel like doing this tag, do it. Answer in the comments with your answers, or do a video of your own. Do it on Instagram, whatever. The Hindsight is 2020 reading tag. Thank you for watching. See you around the tubes.